Join the movement. Listen to Dr. Erica David teach about things everybody should be doing and eating to keep their mind and body healthy. Watch the full ad-free reasoning now, only on www.ineverknewtv.com Premium.
Can a healthy diet truly compensate for a stressed mind and nervous system?
That is a good one. Yeah. A lot of what I focus on is food, and food is medicine, but I have to be honest, it can't solve everything. It's a large part of it, and I think and I'll talk a little bit about how like some foods can actually help with the stress and so on. But we have to be realistic. It's not going to do all of it. We live unfortunately in a pretty stressful society. A lot of us work too much. A lot of us running, 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 and doing too much. We have to look at all those things, and then there's just other things going on in the world that are kind of, hard to look at. It's stressful to see all those things, right? So if we're taking all that stuff on, we're ingesting that mentally too. That's going to impact us, and that's going to impact our health. Specifically for those who are of African descent, in this country, there are things like something called weathering, where weathering is basically like the stress of what we're going through. That's like, I think everyone in this country is stressed, but we have an extra level of stress because of some of the, the racism and things that are going on there. That there's thoughts that it can actually cause like increase in chronic disease because we have this like extra burden on top, right? So there's that. But I don't want to get all depressing. I believe in putting the facts out, putting out what's out there, but I believe we have a lot of agency over our lives. So there's a lot we can do. So we have that, right? But I think there are things we can do. So I'll talk about the non-food things and I'll talk about the food. In terms of the non-food things, don't let it consume you. Like I think it's important to know what's going on in the world. It's important to pay attention to the news and be aware of things, but don't let it be all consuming. I know people where they have like the news on 24/7 cycle, and I'm like, that is not good for you. I think because again, when I talk about food as medicine, but that's food too. You're ingesting that stuff too. And if you have too much of that going on in your system, that is increasing your stress level pretty substantially. So I would say like know what's going on, high level, you shouldn't be like your head in the sand kind of thing, but you shouldn't be like always constantly in the news and all that kind of stuff because it's not healthy. You can't change all of it. You can change what you can change, and that's beautiful, but that's my thought on that. I think it's important for all men and women, for all of us to do self-care, things of self-care. Take time. If you have time, take naps, rest, make sure take your vacations, do all those things that you need to do for yourself. I think that is key. So there's that piece. Now, in terms of the food, it's an interesting thing too, because like there are actually some studies showing that the diets that we eat can also help to decrease that stress too. Yeah. So there's a recent study looking at people who have higher intake of specific, I think it was specific fruits in particular, things like different types of berries and things like that. Um, they have decreased incidence of things like depression. So, when you look at that, like I said, it's a combination in terms of how you're interacting with the news and the environment and all that, but also doing things intentionally to de-stress while also making sure you're eating the foods and getting the nutrients in that are going to help to improve things in terms of your mental health too.
And as you've matured over the years,
Yeah, yeah.
what are some of the things you do to manage your stress?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, like I said, staying away from the news, I think that's definitely one of them. For me, exercise is a big thing, exercise is really restorative for me. So whether that's, again, I talked about the weight training a bit, I talked about some of the cardio. I like to run, and I like to do it in nature. I think getting out in nature is like a key part for me. So when I do run, if the weather, if it's a thunderstorm, I'm going to run inside. But generally, I try to do it outside because the nature is part of the restoration. I walk a lot out in nature. I
I'm a
think that's
walker.
yeah, I walk. Yeah, yeah. Like, but I think the key thing is getting out in nature, getting out in the sun, getting out by trees. All those things I think are really crucial. So those are things that I make sure to incorporate. I do things in terms of, I'll try to do just self-care at home. Like I'll try to make sure I get as much sleep as I can and be really intentional about that. Like, I'm always perfect about it, but I try my best there. And I think also too, doing things like putting together a sleep routine. So like for myself, what I do is at a certain time, I try to make sure I'm in bed by like 11 last at the very, very latest. ideally 10:30 if I can, but I kind of have a sleep routine before that. So at least like a half an hour before I start winding things down. Like my family thought I was crazy when I started doing this, but I would start turning all the lights down. I'm like, no, we need everything dim. We don't need these bright lights on our faces because that's not natural. And they like I said, they thought I was nuts, but now they go along with crazy, their crazy mom and wife at this point. But really bringing things down so they're more natural because our circadian rhythms are kind of messed up with all these lights. So I bring that down, stay off of screens for that last like hour to half hour before bedtime. If for some chance I have to like check something that's like an important message, I actually have these blue light glasses that I actually use just to, to do all those things. I think the sleep part is really important. I do things like yoga and meditation. I do that also too. It's also really restorative for me to do those things. And as I've, alluded to, I work a lot. But I'd still manage to fit it in, even if it's just a little bit. Like I do a thing where in the morning, even if it's just like a 5-10 minute yoga video, I'll do it. I do that. And I make sure I meditate for at least like 15 minutes, like without a doubt. And it's not a lot. I mean, I wish I could do more. Some days if if I have more time, I try to do a bit more. But I think to at least do that minimum is important. And just like it's a non-negotiable. It's like this is just a thing I'm doing. I don't care. No one's stopping me. But I think to make sure that we put those things in our lives makes a huge difference.